Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the Plane of Spiders playing as the force of Brettonia against Empire in a duel of former allies. Quickly, I do want to preface this match with the information that I'm not going to be uploading for at least the next 2 days, maybe the next 3, depending on when I get back from my trip. Going out camping for a while, so chances are I'm definitely not going to be able to upload any videos or anything for the next few days, and I'll see if on Sunday night I'll get any opportunity to upload anything then. But either way, this is going to be the last one for a little bit, and I do think this was a pretty fun one. So definitely, hopefully, this is a bit of a treat. So I did decide to do something a little bit different for once. In my experience, one of the things that you always got to be wary of when you're dealing with Empire is the fact that, as Brettonia, is the fact that they do have arch-lectors. They've got good old-fashioned, what's his face, Volkmar. They've got the warrior priest, of course, all of whom do have an AOE. They've got the Soulfire bombardment, which also grants 90% magic resist for 7 seconds. Now, in a straight-up cavalry fight, this can actually make the difference between victory and defeat, especially when you're relying on Grey Knights to do the vast majority of your damage. So going into this match, I decided to try something a little different, and just in case my opponent had brought that sort of build, I wanted to have access to questing knights. So I decided to bring the Companions of Canel, who I usually bring in this matchup regardless, but rather than bring Grail Guardians or units like that, I decided to bring some additional units of Questing Knights. So you can see 2 units of Questing Knights there, 2 units of Grail Knights. I still think the Grail Knights are very good in this matchup. Some people say don't bother with them at all because of their magic damage, but honestly, 7 seconds is, well, it can be decisive in some situations. It's also not the end of the world. It's not like it can't be played around. It's not like you can't work around it. And honestly, Grail Knights are just such a stellar unit that I think you should always have a few. So I've got 2 of those. And then the core of the army here. Definitely a little more expensive than what I usually do against Empire, simply because I had a few resources left over because I didn't go with Grail Guardians. We do have the Fey Enchantress here, who does have the Shield of Thorns, which I think is pretty fun for non-AP units like Grail Guardians or Grail Knights. You can get a huge buff to your damage. 2 peasants to soak up damage, some men-at-arms with shields, some spear men-at-arms with shields, just to provide a bit of a front line to soak up damage. Beast Slayers of Bastogne has a bit of an last-ditch anchor tool and anti-large tool, and then 2 peasant bows with fire arrows. So a whole selection of sort of fire, and hoping to sort of shut down my opponent's own shooting with these peasant bows. Usually Empire kind of invests their shooting into focusing on more important targets, so your peasant bows kind of get ignored. However, my opponent definitely being sneaky and kind of going with a build that I'd personally say is decent. He did bring the Light Wizard, which I think is a great pick in this matchup, with the Files Protection as well as the Net of Mintok. He is backed by an Arch-Lector who unfortunately does not have Grand Soulfire, which I think is a major mistake. You should always bring this against Brettonia just to negate that magic damage. But he does have Grand Shield of Faith and Grand Hammer of Sigmar, which are still awesome buffs, as well as Benediction for that leadership buff. Alongside him, 2 Demigraph Knights with Halberds, who are of course a very potent pick, and especially buffed up by Light Wizard as well as the Arch-Lector. They're definitely going to be giving these guys a run for their money. In a straight-up fight, unbuffed, these 3 units probably would lose to these 2 Demigraphs, just going head-to-head. For the rest of my opponent's army, very infantry-heavy. Personally, not necessarily what I would recommend, but this sort of elite core of Greatswords is going to be easily able to trounce my force. Greatswords, great pick against Brettonia because they literally trash everything Brettonians put on the field with contemptuous ease. Silver Bullets as well as Sterling's Revenge, providing some AP shooting, and of course they have stocks, so they're harder to hit spot. A single Warrior Priest to sort of anchor the line and provide buffs to the Greatswords, always a fun little combo, though personally, I don't think that in the Brettonia matchup you need it. And then 2 Halberdiers to provide additional backline coverage. So, not the heaviest cavalry support, but nonetheless, my opponent is going to get a nice little connection here. Drops the net on my Grail Knights, which once again prevents that my charge from going in, and he gets his full charge with the Demigraph Knights. Now, granted, I did get some counter-charging with the Questing Knights, and Questing Knights, while not having the greatest charge bonus, will actually trade reasonably well. We do get a nice little Earthblood in there from the Fey, who is immediately going to start trucking along to get into this fight. Now, you might be wondering why throwing the Fey into a potentially losing fight. Well, the Fey actually debuffs enemy attack by 5, and if I'm able to get in here and provide those buffs, it'll be great. And we do get the Fey here on these Questing Knights, hoping to chop through those Demigraphs, but unfortunately you can see things definitely not going ideally. That said, Chalice of Potions is going down over here on some of these Demigraphs. You can see the Grail Knights actually beating down this Light Wizard as I'm desperately cycling my cavalry over from this flank, trying to get them into this fight. And you can see there the Demigraph Knights not having the greatest of times, as they do take a hit from that Comet of Castamdor coming down straight on their beady bird heads. So you can see the Demigryph Knights here getting diced up. The Grail Knights not trading exactly great, but you can see the Questing Knights, they do surprisingly well. Now, eventually these buffs are going to wear off, and the Questing Knights are going to start trading much more effectively. Unfortunately, the Grail Knights, though, definitely starting to fall apart, starting to waver a little bit. But there are reinforcements on the way. The Winged Hussars, the Brettonia, or not really, they're not really much of a Winged Hussar, but the Companions of Canal, as well as these Grail Knights coming in. Unfortunately, these guys do get netted, but you can see disaster here in the front lines. My opponent actually pushed up his shooting to the front to get some shots into my Peasant Bows. You can see simply are going to rout off. The Men-at-Arms are not even vaguely a match for Great Swords. They're going to get completely torn apart. And my opponent is pushing through very aggressively here, doing a great job just crushing my infantry corps. And this is really what you want to be doing. So you can see here, I'm actually going to start pulling back a little bit with the Peasant Bows, trying to just kite these guys out, because at least my peasants are fast enough to escape. Unfortunately for my opponent, a little bit of a disaster here, because while he definitely won this fight, and he caught me unawares, and this is a big mistake on my part, I pushed ahead way too aggressively with this cavalry contingent, when I really should have been suspecting funny business on my opponent's part. I should have definitely at least scouted out here first before making moves. But, you know, mistakes were made. A little bit of overconfidence, a little bit of cockiness on my part. But you can't see my opponent here is finally starting to pay for this overextension here. His Archlector strapped, these Demigryph Knights are starting to run out of models, and of course the Light Wizard is not much of a help in sustained melee. So you can see these Demigryphs finally starting to fall, and of course my opponent has no healing. So although we are going to not trade the most effectively here, we were forced to commit 5 cavalry units and the Fae against 2 cavalry units, and hero, and a really dirt cheap lord. We are going to come out on top, and we are going to have a huge edge in mobility. Now granted, you can see the Archlector here kind of getting beaten down, but my opponent does pull the Sterling's Revenge in. But you know, he doesn't have the best support, and you can see our fire arrows actually start whittling away at the halberdiers. I love fire arrows for just their raw damage output, and of course my opponent's shooting is now distracted. They're not in position to really harass the archers, and one of the cool things about Peasant Bows is they are fast enough to outrun Empire State troops. You can see just how badly these halberdiers are doing under the sustained fire of the arrows. Well, that's redundant, but whatever. I try. In the meantime here, my opponent is trying to use the Sterling's Revenge to try to shut me down, but we are going to get a charge in from the Companions of Canal, who still have a lot of HP, a lot of models, and they're going to just tear through Sterling's Revenge like no tomorrow. And in the meantime, the poor Demigryph Knights just getting forced off the field. A little bit of an overextension here. I definitely didn't need to invest. My opponent didn't have healing, so it's not like even these 2 Demigryphs were a threat. So big mistake on my part, but it is what it is. Here in the meantime, we do get a lovely Earthblood, which is going to heal up this blob of infantry, and we are going to be able to take down this Archlector, who just has no way of eking his way out of this disaster. So my opponent, although getting that beautiful jump on me initially, which slaughtered these Questing Knights, these Grail Knights, those Questing Knights, is not going to be able to take advantage of that in the long run. You can see here my opponent is kind of staggering, and this is a very good play from my opponent's part. He's got these halberdiers set up here, it's a screen, silver bullets behind them, and the silver bullets just raining death and destruction over top of the Sterling's Revenge into my poor Questing Knights. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, he does not really have the ability to sort of flex all these troops around, get them into a good position, and he's still stuck trying to chase down all this infantry, these Peasant Bows. You can see the Peasant Bows actually routed just to the fact that my opponent got close. They weren't even engaged in melee. But my opponent kind of chasing after all this crappy chaff infantry. And in the meantime, the Peasant Bows kind of kite and flight going down. You can see they're actually unloading on these halberdiers, and they do a lot of damage. Peasant Bows are not pushovers damage-wise. And one of those things people often forget is they look at the inaccurate trait, and they think they don't do great DPS, but inaccurate is basically irrelevant on Peasant Bows. If you're fighting into these sorts of line formations, Peasant Bows are going to hit like 90% of their shots anyway. Fortunately, my opponent, although he's definitely laying some nasty whooping on these Companions of Canal, we do manage to slaughter the Sterling's Revenge, get them routed, and in the meantime, we are trying to sort of posture around, get around these silver bullets. But my opponent here definitely have a bit of an edge here with the halberdiers. He's going to be able to just instantly flex them, block me off, and prevent me from causing too much mayhem. And so we'll still do have a healthy amount of models, which is a main threat here to my army. However, you can't see the balance of power that just a few seconds ago was in my opponent's favor is now shifting out of his favor once more. And a huge mistake on my opponent's part here, getting all of these troops bogged down the Beast Slayer's Bastion. Now, granted, they're not going to beat Great Swords. I don't even think Beast Slayers can beat Great Swords in a 1v1, much less in a 2v1 with halberdiers thrown into the mix. But they'll hold, and they're wasting these guys' time. They're going to allow my archers to start rallying. They're going to allow these men-at-arms who were previously pressured so badly to start rallying, and my opponent's going to be put on the back foot. And yes, my opponent still has very healthy movements with great swords, but now that the mobility edge is slowly but surely dissipating, my opponent's going to be put in a bad spot. You can see over here the halberdiers are going to get charged. Now this might seem like a suicidal move, but unbraced with their low armor, they're an incredibly vulnerable unit. And you can see we're actually going to get a pincer here with these Questing Knights diving in on their 8 models. We are going to get a lovely Earthblood there from the Fey Enchantress, and these guys are going to rout. And with that rout, the silver bullets, the great halberdiers off the field. and we are going to be able to ride them down. And this is really where things are going to start going downhill for my opponent's infantry, because they are very dispersed. You can see these greatswords all the way out there, and you can see the poor warrior priest over here. Now, granted, my peasant bows will actually get routed off the field, but we're going to be able to slow them down with the peasant mob. In the meantime, you can see over here we're slowing these guys down. The fire arrows actually routed off the halberdiers, so all this just squishy anti-large support getting forced off. Halberds getting chased down. The silver bullets getting chased down by these rail knights. And now the fan enchanter is going to dive into the fight here, drop these guys melee attack, and make this fight drag out even better, or even longer. Still in Revenge, you're getting chased off by a handful of questing knights. And we're just doing this mop-up, and of course we still have a very healthy unit of Grand Knights here, seeing out 42 melee, 42 units. They actually wiped out that unit of Halberdiers with their bonus to melee attack. These guys are just such absolute beasts, and now my opponent's army is just kind of starting to become segmented and falling into these pockets, and we're feeding these troops into the grinder. Now, granted, I could have tried to sort of reform ranks with all of my troops here, but this way I'm making sure that I can divide and conquer, that I'm comfortably slaughtering these 2 pockets of greatswords. And in the meantime, yeah, I'm throwing away 2 halberds, but honestly, or 2 men-at-arms, but honestly, 325, 650 gold for 1,800 gold worth of units here, even more if you include the halberdiers and those sorts of units, is a huge win for me. Definitely, we wiped out about 3 times the value of troops. And a very one-sided exchange. Now my fire arrow is going to start chipping away at the greatswords. Greatswords obviously being very tired are actually losing armor. They're no longer as well armored as they normally would be. So we're going to chip away at them a little bit. Once again, you can see those wide, thick lines taking quite a beating. If we look at a volley, if we can get a nice little volley, and you can see they had about 4,900 HP, I kind of want to see just how well the fire arrows will do against a decent chunk of armor. You can see they're doing something. You can see an arrow here and there doing a little bit of damage. We are going to get a lovely charge here into these great swords, which is really going to start pulping them. Even with that resistance up, it's just not going to be quite enough. We are going to be able to pull back pretty comfortably, not even losing a Grail Knight, maybe losing a Questing Knight. I don't know. Don't think we lost much of anything. We can see these great swords now are going to be sort of soaked up by the infantry, and they're going to be exposed to flanking from all sides. You can see the fan enchanters diving in with their debuffs. Cavalry contingent is going to swing around from the flanks, and the collapse is just going to be imminent. And you can see these guys are just going to give up the ghost. You can see the bombardment coming down from the warrior priest, but too little, too late, and these guys are going to get destroyed. So, a victory for the Brettonians, despite starting very badly for me. My right flank got completely destroyed. My center essentially got destroyed because it just was not able to hold. We were able to get massive value out of our cavalry and out of our peasant bows to really turn the tide. You can see 73 kills on these peasant bows. And against relatively high value targets, halberdiers are not cheap units. Neither are silver bullets. Both of those are very expensive units, and we were able to just wipe out 73 of them with a dirt cheap unit of peasant bows. These guys are very, very cheap. The cavalry got good value in the long run. The cavalry that survived, essentially. The cavalry that got hit by the demi combo was a disaster for me. Had I played more intelligently or more competently, I would have kept my right flank in reserve, knowing that my opponent could have something hidden in the trees. I honestly suspected he had something hidden in the trees, but arrogantly I figured, you know what, no matter what he has, I can always turn around and run. Brettonian knights are pretty quick. He's not going to be able to catch me. Well, it bit me in the rear, and I got wrecked on that flank. And it was only a last-ditch moving of all my knights from the left flank that saved my bacon there. Front line did pretty pitifully. There's not much to say there. The Beast Slayers did an amazing job holding. Peasant Bows did an amazing job. Fan Enchantress, you know, useful as always. For my opponent's build, and a few critiques here. Now, the Archlector I'm not a big fan of just because he doesn't have regen. I figure if you're going to bring a lord for these sorts of buffs, which are honestly not bad, I would say bring Volkmar. Volkmar has magic, which makes him a nice counter to the Green Knight. He's got all of the buffs from the Archlector, and he does have regen. So that, in my opinion, and that in my eyes, makes him much more useful. And you can keep him on a horse. You don't have to make him, and you don't have to invest super much into him. He's still going to be decent. Light Wizard, I think, is a great choice. Warrior, I'm not too keen on this heavy infantry focus. This is a mistake, in my opinion, that a lot of Empire players make, is that they over-focus on infantry and shooting. They try to go with these conventional builds. And honestly, you need to be fighting the cav game. My opponent's cav focus here was very solid, but he just didn't have enough cav. I was able to lose 3 units of knights, essentially, and still had 2 knights in reserve that could then overwhelm the Demigraph knights and swing the entire course of the match. The fact that my opponent's greatswords mulched through my men-at-arms, these could have been 2 greatswords. This could have been 3 greatswords. And they would have gotten the exact same results as this whole blob of infantry against my crappy infantry line here. 3 greatswords would have just mulched through these men-at-arms. They would have shrugged out the peasant bows, and then they would have torn through the beast slayers of vast stone. This entire front line, despite being cost-wise roughly comparable to these greatswords, 3 units of greatswords are what, 2,700 to 900, 1,500. Yeah, my line would have actually been more expensive than 3 greatswords. And honestly, I'm pretty confident greatswords could mulch through most, if not all, of that line without any support. And that would leave you with so much money to spend on more valuable units. You could bring, I think, honestly, cheaper shooting infantry or outriders are a better choice than Sterling's Revenge and Silver Bullets, because these guys are just so easy to shut down. Usually, you need to be defending them. You can honestly dump the Warrior Priest, who's probably about 1,000 gold, even on foot. Dump a unit of greatswords. That frees you up another 1,800 gold to buy the Royal Gryphites. Drop Sterling's Revenge and Silver Bullets, which will open up another bit of money for another unit of Demigryphs with halberds. And then dump the last unit of halberdiers, open up some space for some spears to zone enemy to provide you with some extra width, get a double spears, or perhaps some limited shooting amounts. But really, I don't think you need this much of an infantry focus against Brettonia. The simple reality is halberdiers and anti-large infantry of this light sort is just not going to cut the mustard. You need heavy cav to deal with this, in my opinion, and so that is a bit of a mistake here on my opponent's part. That's my 2 cents on the Brettonia Empire matchup. Definitely go heavy cav, more so than this. Regardless, getting into my opponent's Sunlight Yellow Overdrive. I hope to see him again on the ladder. It was a very fun match. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below to keep up with additional content. Like I said, I will not be posting for the next couple of days, but I will be back to my regular posting schedule shortly thereafter, and hopefully you guys will see some more good gameplay. So, if you guys have any comments, any criticism, be sure to share. I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. Like I said, there's probably going to be a delay on my responses for at least a few days, but I'll do my best to get back to you guys. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.